The effects are something that you can use and add into your scene to easily create things like fire and electricity, and there's a few of them that you can try. But to give you a little breakdown of a basic effect like the fire effect, this is one of the ones that we went over in class, and what we can go into is the animation menu set here. We want to drop this down and go down to what are called dynamics. Alright, dynamics is going to be a class that you take separately, but this is going to be just some of the basics, so you can start playing with some of these presets, if you will. Now some of these things are coded and have quite a bit of things going on with them, so there is going to be a lot to choose from when you come into the settings on the side here, and you're going to find them in the channel box, and I'm going to show you the two different areas you can mess with those. By going up to effects, you're going to see that these are the presets. Okay, so I can tear this off, and just by looking at it, we have fire, smoke, fireworks, lightning, shatter, curve flow, surface flow, and deleting a flow. So the one that we're going to do is fire. Now at creation, if I go to the option box here, you're going to see that we have a lot of different things that we can play with, and these things are going to be in the settings here on the side in the channel box. So we're not really having to worry about these at the very beginning because we can tweak them at any time. The part that we can change as well that we do want to think about usually at the beginning is how we want this to come off, how we want the fire to be created, or what do we want it to be created from. Surface is going to basically take it from the mesh here that we have selected, and it could be anything. If you want to make firewood, put firewood down here and start the logs on fire by selecting the geometry. We have directional point, which is going to kind of shoot it off in direction, maybe like flamethrowers and stuff. Omnidirectional points, where we're going to have it kind of spread and go from, and it could be points in directions to where they're kind of like straight lines coming out from all directions. So there's different settings that you can use with this. There's also a curve setting, but the most basic that we're going to use is surface. So we're going to take that little example from earlier in the blend shape, and we're going to create fire from that shape. And it's going to be pretty nice because this object does change or blend into another object. So I'm going to hit create with that geometry selected, and you're going to see that I do get a new node called the particle shape 1. There's another one in there called an emitter, and it's usually down here. So it automatically adds a gravity field, and to show you the emitter, the easiest way is just for me to go to window down to outliner. And you're going to see that towards the bottom it has or creates our nodes. So you're going to see that we have, this is from another one that I'm going to bring up, but we have particles. So we're going to have particle objects emitting from this. That's going to be the fire. We're going to have a drag field. That's going to be for some of the forces that are going to work along with this. And you're going to see that when you change some of these, it's going to correlate with some of the settings for the particles, some of the settings for the drag field. We have the gravity field, so we're going to have settings for that as well. And we also have things that are grouped in here. And the groups are going to be based upon however this thing is created or however it's reading the object and the shape of the object. So you're going to see that we have the fire direction. They made a couple of different nodes for the direction and the orientation. And these are the things that you're going to see are linked to something. And to tell that they're linked is you're going to have the different color codings in here for the translate and rotate. And you guys are going to see some of this stuff when it comes to 3D character rigging. And this is going to be, it looks like, for one of the 3D nodes that we have in here. Again, that you're gonna mess with 3D texturing when it comes to materials and lighting and such. But grouped under there is an aim constraint. So you're going to see that we do have an aim constraint on the, sorry, it says fire orientation. Yeah, it's an aim constraint. So the fire is actually aiming towards something. Alright, and we may not see everything in here, but we're going to be able to change a lot of this stuff pretty nicely. So the group is hidden. You can tell that because if I click off of it, it's grayed out. And that is something that you could also do. You can group all of your blend shapes from the previous exercise, and you can come over here and group them, hide the group, which will in turn hide everything else. And you won't be able to select it in here in the actual scene. So working with this, I'm just going to minimize the outliner, and I'm going to come over this way. I'm going to close the effects, and I need to let this play. So what I did is I gave this 1,000 frames, something ridiculous. And when I hit play, I'm going to let it go. And first off, I don't see anything working the way that I want it to work. It could be the scale of this thing. It is in centimeters right now. But I'm going to stop the playback, and there's one thing I want to make sure of. That when I come here to the side, I can click on this little icon here, right down here by AutoKey. That's going to open up my preferences and take me to the time slider category. So it is playing every frame, and the max playback is real time. So it is processing everything by frame. And we want to do that when we use effects, because effects have to mathematically be calculated every single frame. And this is going to help with them to look correct and to act in the way that we expect them to act. So if I did a test render, this is what I have going on here. Pretty big fire, okay? And it's pretty wide for this object, but this object is really, really tiny. So some of the settings in here are going to be ways of working with that. So let me close the effects. I'll bring up the outliner once again. Oh, and look, we can select our particles just by dragging a marquee around them like that, and there's our particle 1 shape. You can see that we have some of the settings in here that we can change. Like we can have them start at a different frame instead of starting on frame 1 right there. But let's see if we can find some of these other parts. Like the speed is really fast, so I can turn it down. Let's see what 10 would look like. Okay, 10's allowing it not to move so fast away from this object. The direction is 1 here. We could change those. I'm not going to change it right now. We could scale the fire down a bit, but let me stop it and do a test render. So I think I will try scaling it. 0.25. Not too bad. Alright. I can tell it to create more fire. I can take the turbulence down, maybe 100. Let it play. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere right with this. Now the lifespan is going to allow this to, you're seeing that it's shrinking, and they shrink and they disappear. That's basically the lifespan. They're made at a certain size, and then they die. Okay, so they live out their life, and they shrink as they live it out. And there's things that we could do to change that, and when you guys are making this yourselves, you guys can actually create them to do such a thing, or you can have them expand before they expire. You can even have them change colors. So the lifespan we can give more than, in our case, a second. We can give them like 8 seconds. I'll type in 8 and hit enter, and you're going to see that now they live a lot longer. Following this one, and there it goes. So we have those different type of deals here. We can also make the density a little bit more thick. So if I did a test render like this, we have that going on. I'll change the density, and I'm going to try to do this with the IPR renderer. Click on IPR, drag around it. I don't know if IPR is going to allow me to do this scan. And I'm not seeing it. And it's taking a while. So I'm just going to stop it. I'm going to come up here to the little red sign here. And I'll just do test renders each time. So I can do the density to maybe, let me type in 25 and do a test render. And I'll save that, and I can compare it to something like 100 and do a test render. And now we can slide between the two. I'm not noticing a big difference. It could be that I just don't have enough particles. Okay, so my next thing is going to be to emit more particles from the emitter. So I can always come back to this and work with it. And one of the things that I will do right now is I'm going to come over here to Window, down to Outliner, open up my outliner again, and I'll click on, I don't necessarily need to mess with the drag, so I'm going to go down to the group, and I may need to select my object just to see the emitter coming off of it. Okay, or I can come down to the bottom here. There's my gravity. We'll see the particles if we have the emission. Alright, and there's a lot of things in here to play with. Now, when you play with these particles and you play with making your own particles and you play with N particles and Bullet and some of the other third-party systems that are out there, then you're going to see that you're going to be looking through a lot of these things and trying to find where they are, because some of them are going to be in certain spots, some of them are going to be called something else, and you're going to run into a lot of different things. So what I can do here is, I know that if I select the object, I can probably go to my attribute editor, and I have my geoconnector. We're not going to talk about all this stuff. We're just going to kind of play with these a little bit. Okay. And the geoconnector, let's see if we can click on some of these, and there's my turbulence field. And we have such a lot of options for these things. Distance. You see that we have time. We have in and out. We could actually take the time, and the start times of these things, we can right click on these and set keys on some of the attributes in here. Okay, so that's a good thing to know, because you can't really get to these without coming to the attribute editor in a lot of cases. Not in all cases, but in this case we'd have to come here to key something like that. So playing with the settings is going to be a big part of this. I'm not seeing what I want here, so I'm going to go back to the channel box and see what I can figure out in here. But I suggest you guys play with these, because the first thing that I really wanted to do was just basically show you guys where to find these, and there's just so many different things that you can do to make these something that works for you, that's something that really makes the scene pop. So what you can do here is you can add fire, and you could even add a light in here, and you can key the light to flash. So it's really going to be up to you on how clever you get with this. So I would definitely play with a lot of these, and I don't want to take any more time on the tutorial. So for the most part, I could just change some of the density and the radius and the speed and such, but I think you guys get the idea. So I can scale the fire just from right here. I could add more particles and stuff, but I'm going to do a test render and see how thick that is. Those are really big, so I do suggest adding more particles at creation. But for the most part, if you let this thing play through, it will act like fire. And there we go. So we have more creating, and you're going to see that it did go based off of the shape, and you can see when the hands came out, it kind of like flopped around. So I'll hit it stop the playback to get this, and you're going to see I can leave this with the flames coming up, and I can come change different things like the density. The density I changed up to a really high amount, and I think it was only something like 25 or something lower than that, maybe 15. But watch, if I click this icon here, that's going to keep this rendered image, and I could come render out another image, and I can compare the two. Okay, I'm not seeing a huge difference there. Let me put like 0.1 and do a test render. Still not really seeing anything. Turbulence spread, intensity. We'll definitely see intensity, so I'm going to put that down to 0.01. And there we go. Now if we put something like 1, something really high, there it is, right? Let's see if we could go ridiculous with it and put like 25. It won't let us go higher than 1. So some of these things you're really going to have to play with to see how it's going to work for you. One of the things I have is the radius. That's going to be around the object, and the end radius, about how far it goes. Alright, so there's so many things in here that you could change, and I would definitely play with a lot of these.